He left her to die, sick, penniless, and alone. 2 years later, she returned, not for revenge, but with power, purpose, and a crown forged in fire. Now the man who broke her is begging at her feet. But this time, she holds the pen to write the ending. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales by King. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Rain tapped against the window pane like impatient fingers. Outside, Atlanta's skies were bruised with thunderclouds, painting the world in cold grays. Inside the dim hospital room, Amara lay still, a sharp contrast to the storm. The four hummed quietly. Machines beeped rhythmically. Her skin was pale, her frame frail, bones pressing gently against paper-thin skin. She blinked slowly, lips dry, throat sore. Each breath felt like lifting bricks. Across from her bed sat Derek, or at least the version of him she used to know. The man she married 7 years ago, the one who held her hand through early miscarriages, the one who promised, in sickness and in health. But now, he wouldn't meet her eyes. "You're quiet," she rasped, her voice hoarse from the oxygen tube. Derek shifted in the chair, staring out the window instead. The rain gave him an excuse not to look at her. "You should rest." "I've been resting for 3 days," she said, managing a small, bitter smile. "Say what you came to say." He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. He was wearing his good sneakers, the ones he only wore on important days. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He silenced it. Then another buzz. He pulled it out, glanced, and shoved it back quickly. She saw it anyway. Shayla. Amara looked down at her hands, the 4 in her arm. Her wedding ring was loose now, too big for her thinning fingers. "You're leaving." It wasn't a question. Derek exhaled, rubbing his temples. This ain't how I thought life would go, Amara. I can't do this anymore. You keep getting worse. The hospital bills are never-ending. The doctors don't even sound hopeful." "Don't," she interrupted, voice sharp despite her weakness. "Don't pretend this is about bills." He looked at her then. Finally, a flicker of guilt passed through his eyes like a ghost refusing to stay. "You don't get it. I'm not built for this. I'm suffocating. Watching you fade day after day. It's killing me too." "No," she said, forcing herself upright, coughing. "You're not dying. You're running. There's a difference." He hesitated at the foot of the bed. "I took the money. The joint account, it's empty. I needed it to get out." Silence. Outside, thunder rolled. Amara didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply said, "You're a coward." Derek flinched. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing left to justify. No explanation that could rewrite the truth. He turned to leave. "I hope she's worth it," Amara whispered. He paused, back still turned. "She's not sick," he muttered, barely audible. And then he was gone. Amara stared at the door for a long time after it closed. Not just the hospital door, the door to her marriage, her trust, her stability. She didn't have family. Her mother had died 5 years ago. She hadn't spoken to her sister since the funeral. She'd given everything to Derek. She had no one left. No one, and now not even money. 2 weeks passed in a blur of fluorescent lights, cold meals, and mechanical nurses. Social workers began visiting her room. Words like discharge plan, charity case, and state housing were thrown around. One night, after everyone had gone, she stared out the window, her body aching, her mind numb. The city lights blinked in the distance, full of life and movement and people who weren't dying. She whispered aloud to no one, "I won't die here." It wasn't just a prayer. It was a promise. The hospital gown felt like a shroud as Amara took her first steps outside the hospital. Thin, threadbare clothes clung to her frame. A borrowed coat from one of the nurses barely fought off the bite of the cold Atlanta wind. Her discharge papers were folded in her trembling hands, along with a bus card with 2 swipes and a list of emergency shelters. She stood on the curb, blinking in the pale morning light. The world had moved on without her. Cars rushed past. Pedestrians scrolled their phones. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Amara felt like a ghost drifting through a life that no longer belonged to her. The first night at the shelter was a lesson in humility and survival. Metal bunk beds lined the walls. The air reeked of sweat, mildew, and hopelessness. A woman cried quietly into her pillow across from her. Another muttered to herself, twitching with invisible demons. Amara curled up in her assigned cot, hugging the coat tightly, trying not to breathe in the despair. That night, she stared at the ceiling and repeated her vow. I won't die like this. Days turned into weeks. Amara volunteered to clean the shelter kitchen in exchange for extra food. She swept floors, folded laundry, and helped an older woman named Ms. Gwen write a letter to her estranged son. She began to be seen, not just as a body in a bed, but as a soul fighting to stay afloat. One cold Tuesday afternoon, while cleaning tables after a soup line, a tall young man walked in wearing a navy blue button-up and slacks too crisp for the shelter. He wasn't a resident. He was here to volunteer. Name's Jordan, he said with a warm smile, offering her a glove-covered hand. I help run real estate seminars down in Midtown, but I come here when I can. She stared at his hand for a moment before shaking it. His grip was firm, not pitying. You don't belong here, he said casually. She stiffened. I'm aware. No, I mean, you don't move like the others. You stand straight, even when you're in pain. You listen before you speak. That's rare around here. Amara looked away. Compliments were dangerous. They made you hope. Jordan kept showing up. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes with donated clothes, other times with leftover meals from catered events. One day, he brought a small paperback book, How to Get Your Real Estate License in Georgia. You ever thought about real estate? He asked. She raised an eyebrow. You think a sick, broke woman with no degree and no home can sell houses? No, he said. But I think you can. It began with studying at the library, using borrowed books and Jordan's notes. Her health was still shaky. Some mornings she couldn't even get out of bed. But she pushed through. Lupus had taken her strength, but not her mind. Not her hunger. She passed her licensing exam 3 months later. Jordan stood outside the testing center, waiting with a bouquet of sunflowers and a fist bump. Let me introduce you to my boss, he said. Amara entered the sleek glass office of Hart and Wells Realty wearing a blazer from Goodwill, a pressed white shirt, and shoes one size too big. Her resume was bare, her experience non-existent. But she sat across from Monica Wells, co-founder of the agency, and answered every question with clarity, precision, and a quiet fire that made Monica sit back in her chair and say, All right, Amara. One deal. I'll give you one deal. Close it and we'll talk. That night, Amara didn't sleep. She researched. She memorized the market. She learned comps, read contracts, and watched videos on negotiation tactics until sunrise. When she walked into her first showing, it was a modest 2-bedroom in Decatur. The couple was skeptical. Young, newly engaged, nervous about buying their first home. Amara didn't sell them a house. She painted them a vision. She told them where the morning light would fall in the baby's room. She pointed out the backyard where the dog would dig holes and get scolded. She showed them the kitchen where holiday dinners would be cooked over laughter and spilled wine. They signed the offer 2 days later. Monica called her into the office the next week. You closed your first deal faster than anyone I've hired in 2 years, she said. You're in. Amara nodded, expression calm. But later, alone in the bathroom, she cried into her hands for 10 full minutes, not out of weakness, but relief. She moved into a studio apartment that month. It wasn't much, a mattress on the floor, mismatched plates, a broken lamp, but it was hers. On her first night there, she stood at the window with a microwaved bowl of ramen and whispered, I made it. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. The Midtown skyline glittered outside Amara's window like a promise kept. It was barely dawn, Atlanta still wrapped in blue haze, but she was already awake, standing barefoot on the cold concrete floor of her apartment, watching the city stir to life. Gone were the shelter walls and the scent of mildew. Gone was the mattress on the floor. In its place, hardwood floors, chrome fixtures, clean white walls, and windows that touched the ceiling. Her name was now stitched in gold on business cards. Amara Cole, Hart and Wells Realty, top closer. She had become a force. Word of her spread fast, not just because she sold homes, but because she sold futures. She remembered what it meant to have nothing, to cling to hope with cracked hands. So she never spoke down to clients who were barely scraping together a down payment. She never turned away a couple with bad credit or a single mom needing a miracle. Instead, she worked harder. Late-night calls, weekend showings, last-minute contract rewrites. She lived and breathed the game. Her lupus flared sometimes, but she managed it. Discipline became her religion. Amara arrived at networking events not just dressed to kill, but to conquer. Black power suits, red lipstick, confidence sharpened like a blade. Where once she felt invisible, she now made people shift when she entered a room. One afternoon, while closing a deal on a 6-bedroom colonial in Sandy Springs, her client, a CEO of a growing tech firm, asked her, "How long have you been doing this?" Amara smiled. "Long enough to know what people are really buying when they buy a home." "And what's that?" "Security," she said. "A place to be human, imperfect, loved. A place where you can fall apart and put yourself back together." He stared at her, then nodded slowly. "Damn, you're good." But success didn't quiet the ghosts. At night, alone in her king-sized bed, her thoughts returned to Derek. She imagined him drunk, broke, abandoned by the very woman he stole her life savings to impress. She pictured the way he left, not with sorrow, but relief, as if shedding her like dead weight. She never reached out, but she never forgot. 3 months after her 5th six-figure sale, Amara and Jordan co-founded the Phoenix Project, a nonprofit dedicated to women who had been abandoned due to chronic illness, disability, or domestic betrayal. It started small, free seminars on financial literacy, small grants, job placement programs. But the media noticed. Then came the invitations, interviews, podcasts, local panels. From homeless to millionaire, the headlines read. Amara was cautious with her story, revealing just enough to inspire, but not enough to bleed. She never named Derek. She didn't have to. One evening, after a panel discussion on women in business, Jordan pulled her aside. "You ever take a minute to just be proud of yourself?" She looked at him, studying his face. There had always been something steady in him, like a lighthouse during her darkest nights. "Pride isn't useful to me yet," she said quietly. "There's more to do." He nodded. "Just don't forget to live, too." Amara smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The next morning, her assistant burst into her office holding a magazine. "Look," she said breathlessly. "You're on the cover of Atlanta Rise." There it was, her face, framed by the downtown skyline, captioned with bold white letters. "Real Estate Royalty, How Amara Cole Went from Rock Bottom to Queen of the Market." She held the magazine in her hands, staring at her own image for a long time. And somewhere, far across the city, Derek held the same magazine. In a gas station convenience store, hands dirty, clothes wrinkled, jaw clenched. His world collapsed with the realization. She didn't die. She rose. Back in her office, Amara placed the magazine in a drawer. Not on the wall. Not on display. Just a reminder. She didn't need a crown to know she was royalty. She had already reclaimed her throne. It was a Friday morning in early spring when the devil walked back into Amara's life. The day had started like any other. Emails, contract reviews, a site visit in Alpharetta. Her planner was color-coded to the hour. Her phone buzzed with the rhythm of a woman in demand. She had just stepped into her office at Hart and Wells when her assistant peeked in, hesitant. "There's a man here. He says he knows you." Amara didn't look up. Clients need an appointment. He didn't say he was a client. That made her glance up. He said his name is Derek. Silence fell between them. The only sound was the hum of the city beyond the glass windows. Amara closed her laptop slowly. "Send him up." He looked smaller than she remembered. Derek stepped into her office wearing worn jeans and a wrinkled shirt that had seen better days. His hair was overgrown, patchy in places. His skin looked dry, tired. There were bags under his eyes, the kind that don't come from lack of sleep, but from years of bad decisions. He stopped just inside the doorway, as if afraid to approach. The scent of expensive perfume and polished wood was foreign to him now. Amara stood behind her desk, arms crossed. No smile, no softness, just silence. He cleared his throat. You look good. Alive, you mean? Her voice was razor-sharp. Because I wasn't supposed to be. He winced. I didn't come here to fight. No. What did you come here for, Derek? She asked. Closure? Forgiveness? Or did Shayla finally leave you, and now you need a place to crash? His jaw tightened. The mention of Shayla hit a nerve. She left 6 months ago, he muttered. Took what little I had left. He paused. I've been living in my car. Amara tilted her head slightly, unfazed. You stole everything I had when I was too weak to stop you. You left me in a hospital bed with no money, no home, and no one. You forged my signature to drain our savings account. And now, because your karma came around, I'm supposed to feel sorry for you. I made a mistake, Amara. I was scared. No, don't. You were selfish. You were cruel. And you were calculated. Derek stepped closer, his voice cracking. I was wrong. I know I was. But I lost everything. Everything, Amara. And when I saw your face on that magazine, I remembered who you were. Who I walked away from. She let out a low laugh, not amused, but stunned at the audacity. You remembered who I was? You remembered the woman you left for dead. He dropped to his knees. In her penthouse office. In his ragged clothes. I'm begging you. Please. Just help me get back on my feet. I'm not asking for money. Just a chance. Amara stared down at him, not with anger. Not even hatred. With power. And peace. She walked slowly around the desk, heels clicking on polished floors, stopping just in front of him. Look at me, Derek. He raised his head. I didn't just survive what you did to me. I rebuilt from the ashes you left me in. I rose without a hand to hold, without a cent to spend. I turned your betrayal into a business empire. I made your abandonment into my motivation. Tears welled in his eyes. I know, and I hate myself every day. She crouched down, so they were eye to eye. You're right to hate yourself, because you didn't just break a promise. You tried to bury me, but you forgot that I'm not made of glass. I'm made of fire. Derek swallowed hard, trembling now. I'm sorry. She stood back up and smoothed her dress. I'm not the woman you left. That woman needed you. This one doesn't. He looked up, still kneeling. Please, I'm begging you. Just help me. Even a referral. A job. Something. Amara turned to her desk and pressed the intercom button. Tamika, you can come in. The door opened a moment later. 2 Atlanta PD officers walked in, plain clothes. Derek's eyes widened. What the hell? Did you really think I'd forget? Amara said calmly. You forged my signature on withdrawal documents. You accessed my health insurance account and tried to terminate my policy while I was hospitalized. You committed felony fraud, Derek. His face turned pale. He stumbled backward. You're having me arrested? You stole my life, she said coldly. Now I'm reclaiming my justice. The officers read him his rights as they cuffed him. He screamed her name as they pulled him toward the door. Amara, please, please don't do this, please. She stood still, unblinking, as the door shut behind him. When silence returned, Amara sat down at her desk, took a deep breath, and picked up the magazine from her drawer. She looked at her own face for a moment, then slowly tore the cover from it and dropped it into the trash. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because she didn't need it. Not anymore. The courtroom was quiet, save for the steady ticking of the clock. Amara sat in the second row, dressed in a tailored navy suit, her locks swept back into a neat bun, her face calm. No jewelry, no makeup, no mask, just her. Derek stood at the defense table in a faded button-down and scuffed shoes. His wrists were no longer cuffed, but the weight of his choices hung visibly on his shoulders. His eyes scanned the room, never quite landing on her. He had entered a plea deal, 2 years probation, mandatory restitution, and financial counseling. A light sentence, legally speaking. But Amara hadn't pressed for prison. She didn't need it. He was already in the worst kind of cage, the one made of his own decisions. When the judge adjourned the hearing, Derek turned slightly, as if hoping for one last glance. Some sliver of connection, pity, anything. Amara stood and walked right past him. She didn't even blink. That night, the city celebrated her. The Phoenix Project hosted its first major gala at a rooftop venue overlooking the Atlanta skyline. String lights twinkled against the glass railings. A jazz band played low and elegant. Donors, media, local leaders. They all came in their finest, clinking glasses and whispering Amara's name like she was a myth come to life. Jordan stood at the podium, clearing his throat before introducing her. "I met Amara Cole in a shelter kitchen," he said. She was wiping down tables, but she spoke with the poise of a leader. "I saw someone who hadn't been broken, just buried. And tonight, I think we can all agree, she's not only risen, but she's building ladders behind her for others to climb." Applause rang out as Amara approached the microphone. She paused, looking out over the sea of faces, mentors, survivors, strangers who believed. "I used to think survival was the end goal," she began. "That if I could just make it through the pain, the betrayal, the illness, that would be enough. But survival is just the first chapter." Her voice was clear, not loud, but it carried. "I stand here today not because I got lucky. I stand here because I refused to let what was done to me define who I could become. And now, every dollar raised tonight, every woman we help, every life we rebuild, that is the true crown I wear." The room rose to their feet. Later, after the speeches and the dancing, after the wine and the laughter, Amara slipped away to the balcony. The city stretched before her, infinite and glittering. She leaned against the railing, heels kicked off, glass of ginger ale in her hand. Jordan found her there, holding his jacket over his arm. "Thought I'd find you out here," he said. "Needed air." He handed her his jacket without asking. She draped it over her shoulders and took another sip of her drink. "You killed that speech," he said. She smiled. "I meant it." Jordan studied her quietly. "You've changed." "I had to." "No, not just because of what happened," he said. "You changed because you chose to. That's different." She didn't answer right away. The breeze lifted a few strands of her hair. In the distance, sirens echoed, faint, not urgent. "Do you ever miss who you were before at all?" she asked softly. Jordan looked at her, his voice gentle. "No, because then I wouldn't know you now." A moment passed between them, heavy, warm, unspoken. But Amara turned back to the city. "I'm not looking for a happy ending," she said. "I'm building a beginning. For me. For the next woman who gets left behind. For every person who thinks they've run out of chances." Jordan nodded. "Then this is your empire." She smiled, not with pride, but with peace. That night, in her penthouse, candles lit, heels by the door, the sound of the city like a lullaby. Amara sat on her balcony and finally opened the letter she had written to herself 2 years ago in the shelter. It had been sealed in an envelope, tucked into the back of her Bible. "If you're reading this, you're still here. That's enough. That's everything." She folded it back up, pressed it to her chest, then placed it gently in the fireproof box beside her bed. Not as a keepsake, as a monument. There were no parades, no fairy tale kisses, no final curtain calls. Just a woman who refused to stay broken. A woman who rose, built, and chose to live. And for Amara Cole, that was the crown she wore. One that couldn't be stolen, shattered, or stripped. Only earned. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, comment, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.